Joel and I sat by his window, spying on the neighbors. It was incredibly bright and sunny, and he warned me not to look directly at the sun. I asked him why, and he didn't know. He just said his mom had caught him doing it once and told him to stop. So we look at each other, and we throw a hand up over our eyes and turn our faces towards the window. On the count of 3, we lifted a finger and peeked through. My vision whited out, and I squeezed my eyes shut again. The bright orb of the sun shone on the backs of my eyelids. We sat there silently for a while, sharing something bad and dangerous. Joel was my first friend. He lived 2 doors down from me, and we met when we were 3 years old. I was busy in my driveway making perfume. It was very easy, the recipe. I would just go around the block and pick flowers out of my neighbor's yard, daffodils, tulips, whatever, toss it in a bowl of water. And the trick was to stir the flowers fast enough to release the smell. I was convinced that this is how all perfumes were made. So suddenly, a shadow darkens my flowers swirling in the water. And I look up, and there he is. Do you want to play with me? Whoa. Like, I admired his bravery. I mean, this kid crossed the threshold from the safety of the sidewalk into a stranger's driveway. Okay, yeah. I followed him back to his house. Now, your first friend is like a passport to an exotic new land. I mean, Joel's family, he had a mom, he had a dad, he had 2 teenage brothers who I only really got fleeting glimpses of as they quickly closed their bedroom doors whenever we were around. And his house, it was always like 75 degrees. It was sweltering. And that just amplified the alien potpourri of his family. It was like a mix of chalky detergent and teenage sweat. But we would spend most of our time in his second-story bedroom, playing cops and bad guys. I did let him choose the game. His room was the police station, and his closet was the jailhouse. And I remember he finally got a police costume, but he didn't know how to do buttons. And I was like, Joel, I just learned how to do buttons a week ago. So I demonstrated how you coax the little plastic circles through the slits with my fingers. He took over, he fastened a few, and he had his tongue out in serious concentration. Now, the journey from his front door to his bedroom could at times be perilous. Once I came over and his dad let me in, and he was sitting on the couch with his mom, and she was giving him a shot with a needle. My eyebrows crinkled in concern, and he announced, I have diabetes. I had no idea what that meant, and I was so worried his mom was going to give me a shot. I mean, she was scary. She very much looked like, just like the woman you see at the grocery store who is kind of running into everyone with her shopping cart. Wordlessly, she was very intimidating. She wasn't funny or warm like my mom. She barely spoke at all. And she insisted on making lunch for us. I guess if you're like 3, 4, you know, the adult needs to make food for these children. But she would always make the same thing. It was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches without the peanut butter. It's like the peanut butter is the only viable part of the sandwich. So why are you doing this? So we'd be sitting at the kitchen table, and just this like sickening sweet smell of grape jelly, the worst type of jelly, piercing my nose as my fingers just sank into the soft white bread. And I'd come up with an excuse and go home to eat something else, honestly. Dear God. So Unfortunately, when we started kindergarten, Joel was not in the same classroom as me. And I also noticed he stopped coming around the driveway to play with me. And so the only time I would see him is when he was like whizzing around the neighborhood on his bike. And at the time, I did not know how to ride without training wheels. And so I could not keep up with this level of speed. This level of excellence was not for me at that time. And I just felt like, okay, if I could learn how to ride a two-wheeler, Joel and I would be best friends again. And instead of eating these sandwiches, we could just get on our bikes and explore parts unknown of our neighborhood. Like, we could cross the street, okay? We could. So I had this like banana seat bike from the 70s that my mom found somewhere. And you can't put training wheels on that because in the 70s, they were just like, if the kid dies, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. So the training wheels were like hovering at least an inch off the ground. So I would strain my legs to reach the pedals, and big if, I could get the thing going, the ride was this unsteady sway from right to left. Not good. So one day, I gear up, and I get my neon pink knee pads, my neon pink elbow pads, and my neon pink helmet, and I tell my mom, take off the training wheels. Take them off. So I hoist myself onto the seat, and here we go, all right. I'm swatting at the pedals, okay? The front wheel is slithering back and forth like a snake, and the handlebars just fall out of my hands. My legs get all tangled up. Next thing I know, the sidewalk is leaping towards my face, smacking me. I roll onto my back, and I look up. I crashed in front of Joel's house. Classic. As I get to my feet, I notice that a chunk of neon pink plastic has been scraped off my knee pad and is just like stuck into the gray sidewalk. And it wasn't long after that, and maybe it's because of that, Joel moved away. All I know is that one day he was gone, and I did not get a chance to say goodbye to him. 7 years later, I'm in 8th grade science class, and a new kid walks in. And his name is Joel, and I know it's him from his eyes. That's the Joel. So the minute the bell rings for recess, which in middle school is just you stand around and are very upset and try not to get bullied. The minute the bell rings for recess, I follow him out the door. And honestly, at that time, there wasn't a lot that I got excited about. I didn't really have hope, I guess you would say. So I was convinced he would be as thrilled as I was that we had found each other again, that we would be together again. In the midst of middle school, which is very much a breeding ground, a army training camp for hatred and cruelty. From the youngest 6th grader to the principal of the school, telling you to your face that you're gonna go to jail or get killed, and that's your future. This was like a keepsake from a simpler time. So I noticed that he's standing towards the back of the school with some other kids. I walk towards him. Hi, Joel! It came out way too loud, like really loud. And he stared at me, and time ticked by in slow motion. We used to be friends. You were my neighbor. I'm Taylor. He smiles out of politeness. I can tell he's uncomfortable. He doesn't remember me. On my way home from school that day, I stop in front of his old house. And there's his window with the Japanese maple leaves rustling against the glass. And just behind the glass, suspended in time, there are two little kids who only need each other. And now I'm on the other side of the continent, but I can visit that window and my first friend Joel anytime I want. All I have to do is close my eyes and summon the orb of the sun to the backs of my eyelids.